The Joshua trees of the high desert near Palmdale, California, over the years have witnessed many important milestones in the history of aviation. As the sun rose on the morning of July 17, 1989, another of these historic events was about to unfold. The first flight of the B-2 Advanced Technology Bomber. In the preceding days, technicians and engineers from Northrop, the B-2 subcontractor team members, and the U.S. Air Force spent long hours of intense preparation for this flight. For some, it was the culmination of more than 9 years of planning, effort, and hard work. Meanwhile, these employees' co-workers anxiously awaited the big event, and anticipation was high.
I'm just really excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Pilots are here, ready. Everybody's here. The tension's high. We're going to do it.
Well, I think this one's exciting because this program has so much media attention and visibility that the first flight's getting a lot more attention than other programs, so I think there's going to be almost, complete nationwide, and a lot of places in the world are going to be watching this.
Well, every first flight gives you a sense of anticipation, and that's probably indescribable, that moment of liftoff when you look at the culmination of many years of a lot of people's effort. There's nothing that tugs at your heartstrings any more than a first flight of any kind, but this is going to be the biggest one we've seen.
The 7 days prior to first flight began with low-speed taxi tests on Monday, July 10th.
The low-speed taxi tests were conducted to evaluate braking and ground handling characteristics of the aircraft, as well as to acquire data on aircraft systems in order to clear the aircraft for high-speed taxi. The aircraft was taxied at speeds of 30, 65, and 90 knots. The test points were successful, and the net result was the aircraft was cleared of its first milestone towards first flight and proceeded on to high-speed taxi.
Yeah, it looks good for 1 o'clock today. We'll do the high-speed taxi test.
On Thursday, July 13th, the news media and the public were again present, this time for the high-speed taxi runs. As the test schedule slipped from an early morning start into mid-afternoon, the desert heat seemed to transform the B-2 into a mirage, a stealthy image that fit the bomber's intended mission. The front landing gear lifted at 115 knots and easily achieved the planned 5-degree nose-high angle. A few days later, on July 17th, once more at dawn, the news media turned their cameras toward Plant 42, and onlookers thronged the roads adjacent to the runways, straining for a glimpse of the world's most advanced aircraft. At 6:35 a.m., the brakes were released, and the Advanced Technology Bomber brought America and the world into a revolutionary new age of aviation history. The B-2's first flight continued for 2 hours as the pilots worked through a checklist of test procedures, thus beginning a test program that will continue for the next several years to prepare the B-2 for full operational deployment as the newest weapon in the United States arsenal of defense. After taking off at 6:36 a.m., the B-2 made a perfect landing at Edwards Air Force Base at 8:29 a.m. Upon deplaning, the test pilots were greeted by Northrop Chairman and CEO Tom Jones, Northrop Corporation President Kent Kressa, Brigadier General Richard M. Schofield, U.S. Air Force B-2 Program Director, and General Bernard Randolph, Commander of the Air Force Systems Command. After an aircrew debriefing, a news conference was held.
And of course, this will significantly add to our deterrent posture, because we're talking about an airplane now that basically negates the air defenses that have been built up over the many, many years around the world. So the fact of the matter is that this is a tremendous step forward, and we're extremely pleased with the performance that took place today.
The altitude, max altitude, was a little above 10,000 feet. 10,000 was the altitude that we were going to. The maneuvers, what we do are what we call integrated test blocks. We flew those at 180 knots, 150 knots, and 140 knots, and 140 was the approach speed.
Just getting the airplane airborne was not a problem, you know.
So that wasn't a high workload?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, it was, the flight controls are very nice, fairly light forces on it, handles nicely.
Did you find any kinks that you had not found in a simulator, or any kinks that need to be worked out further along in the flight test that you can talk about?
No, I think the things performed very close. You know. Of course, you always try and take your flight test data and feed it back into the simulator to get a closer evaluation, but it was very close.
It's not a kinky airplane. You got to remember, we're test pilots, so most of what we were doing was associated with just making the first takeoff on this airplane for the first time. It had never been done before.
And trying to get data. You know.
And trying to collect data for the engineers. We love them, so we have to, give them something back. They gave us the airplane, we got to hand them something back.
For the many thousands at Northrop, Boeing, LTV, General Electric, Hughes, and other members of the B-2 team, July 17, 1989 is a day that will never be forgotten.